first saw the house on Hollow Creek Road, it was already dying. Its paint peeled like flaking skin. The porch sagged under some invisible, crushing weight, and ivy crawled across the walls like veins feeding something ancient and hungry. It was the kind of place people whispered about, the kind of place that held its secrets close. The real estate agent, bless her heart, spoke in a chirpy, forced voice, eager to close the deal. "Needs a little love, that's all," she said. Her smile stretched just a little too wide. Daniel smiled back, but his was the kind of smile that comes from pride, not joy. He'd made a career, a living, out of buying broken things and forcing them to stand again. To him, this dilapidated house wasn't a warning. It was a challenge, a test of will. He didn't believe in the stories. Of course there were stories. The neighbors, casting wary glances from behind their curtains, said the place was cursed. They claimed no one ever stayed longer than a month. They spoke of whispers that bled from the walls after dark, and of a foundation built on something the town had deliberately buried and chosen to forget. Daniel just laughed it off. He didn't believe in ghosts, only in rot, rust, and bad wiring. He was a man of logic, of hammers and nails, not of superstition. The first week went exactly as planned. He attacked the house with a determined fury, patching the leaky roof, tearing out the old, warped flooring, and replacing it with new, sturdy planks. As he worked, he got into the habit of talking to the house, a one-sided conversation with his silent, wooden patient. When a plank squeaked under his boot, he'd grin and say, "You're just protesting, huh? Don't like the new look?" When the ancient water pipes rattled and groaned, he'd mutter, "I'll get to you. I'll fix you, don't you worry." It became a strange comfort, this little ritual, the way the house always seemed to answer him with its groans, its creaks, and its sighs. He was breathing life back into it, and it was responding in its own language. But by the second week, the sounds began to change. The language became more articulate, more intentional. He'd hear faint thumps when he walked upstairs, like soft footsteps trailing just behind him, always just out of sight. In the attic, he'd find nails that had twisted themselves loose overnight, lying on the floor like discarded teeth. And then there was the whispering, sometimes at exactly 3:07 a.m. He'd jolt awake to the sound of it, soft and breathy, threading its way through the air vents, a murmur he could never quite make out. He told himself it was the wind. It was always the wind. An old house, full of drafts, nothing more, until one night. He was under the kitchen sink, wrestling with a stubborn leak. Water dripped onto his face. His clothes were soaked, and his frustration was boiling over. After the wrench slipped for the 10th time, he slammed it down on the floorboards and snapped, his voice echoing in the small space. "God, I wish you'd just listen for once." And in that instant, the house went completely, unnaturally still. The faucet stopped dripping. The air grew thick and heavy, as if the very walls were holding their breath, waiting. Then, from deep within the pipes, came a sound that made his spine turn to ice. A low, guttural rumble that started as a vibration and slowly, impossibly, scraped itself into words. "I'm listening." Daniel froze, every muscle in his body locking up. His skin prickled with a cold that had nothing to do with the damp floor. The floorboards themselves seemed to shudder beneath him. And then the house moved. Not the way houses settle with a gentle creak. It shifted, a distinct, powerful pulse that shot through every beam and joint, like a monstrous heartbeat awakening after a long, deep sleep. The single kitchen light bulb flickered violently, strobing, casting shadows that twisted and danced across the walls like writhing, distorted limbs. He scrambled backward, crab-walking away from the sink, his eyes wide with disbelief and terror. But the walls, they were breathing. The paint bubbled outward in sickening blisters. The plaster cracked, forming spiderweb patterns that spread with audible snaps. And beneath the surface, something seemed to press forward. The faint, horrifying outline of a face, its mouth opening and closing in a silent, desperate scream. A whisper crawled through the vents again, closer this time, coiling around him like smoke. You wanted me to listen. The voice was everywhere now. It came from the walls, from the floor, from the hollow, dark spaces inside the walls, where nails screeched as they were ripped from the wood, and beams moaned as if in agony. He ran. He bolted for the front door, his only thought to get out, to escape into the night. But the door wouldn't move. It was sealed shut, as if it had been welded to the frame. He pulled and pulled until his hands were raw, the wood splintering beneath his desperate fingernails. Slam! Every window in the house crashed shut in perfect, deafening unison. Slam! The basement door, which he'd kept firmly locked, flew open with explosive force, spilling a darkness as thick and black as ink across the hallway floor. And from within that darkness, a new sound emerged. The sound of something climbing the stairs, slow, wet, and sickeningly deliberate. A sound that didn't belong in any house, in any world. His trembling hands found a hammer he'd left on a table. It shook, heavy and useless in his grip. The voice slithered into his ear again, intimate and possessive. Don't run. You asked me to listen. The floorboards directly under his feet began to ripple, bulging upward as if something massive and alive was crawling just beneath them. The air filled with a cloying, suffocating smell of damp earth, rot, and old spilled blood. He opened his mouth, and his scream tore from his throat, raw and hopeless. And the lights went out. When the neighbors finally worked up the courage to call the police the next morning, they found the house looking strangely peaceful. Daniel's truck sat in the driveway, the engine cold, the driver's side door still hanging open as if he had just stepped out. But every door and window of the house was sealed shut, impenetrable. The police had to force their way inside. What they found was nothing. The interior was pristine. Every wall was smooth, covered in a fresh coat of paint that was strangely warm to the touch. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no footprints, no Daniel Morgan. Only one thing was out of place. In the very center of the living room floor, the wood grain had changed. It no longer ran in straight lines. It now swirled and coiled into the faint, unmistakable outline of a human face. Its mouth stretched wide in a silent scream, its eyes wide with an eternity of terror. And they say, if you go to that house on Hollow Creek Road, if you get down on your hands and knees and press your ear to that spot on the floor, you can hear the faintest sound, a whisper from beneath the boards, a breath carried through the wood, repeating the same 3 words over and over and over. I'm still listening. Thanks for tuning in to this chilling tale. If you enjoyed being terrified, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that will keep you up at night. Stay safe out there.